Hi, Part 3s. It's Friday, May the 15th, and we're starting a new module, Liturgy and Sacraments. And so what's nice about this module is it's kind of linked to some of the topics in morality and ethics. So we're dealing with love, we're dealing with matrimony, and the module prior to this, we were dealing with sexual ethics. So with this in mind, I decided that I think I'll try to make some of the links in this video. No one really jumped at the opportunity to engage in an online discussion to flesh out some of the issues dealing with sexual ethics, and I don't blame you. You've got so much going on, you just don't need another thing on your plate. So let me try to do some things to link it in with this to kind of maybe make it a little more clear. And if this is not enough, please reach out to me. And it doesn't have to be now during the course. It could be during the school year when you're faced with the responsibility of trying to teach this to your students and you're not sure exactly if you're doing this right. Please don't hesitate to call me or email me and use me as a resource. I really feel strongly about our Catholic school system. I feel very strongly that we need to do this right, and I feel very strongly we need to give our kids proper guidance. Okay, so do not ever feel like you're bothering me or you cannot approach me with this, and I will do my best to help you understand, because it took me a long time to figure this out, and I really wish I could rewind and start my career with all the knowledge I have, because then my teaching career would be so easy. But it took me my entire teaching career to kind of figure this out, and here I am at this end trying to help you guys. Okay, so our next module, when we're looking at liturgy and sacraments, let's just take a moment to just look at liturgy for a second. You've got some of my most favorite theologians guiding you. Father Ron Rollheiser and Father Richard Rohr, the two R's in the Catholic Church, and they're amazing priests, but they're amazing theologians, and I really love how they can really navigate some of the complexities of our church, the teachings, and how to be church. Okay, and and with that comes a price too. I know some people will look at what they're saying or writing and question, does this align itself with the church? I know I've probably been questioned because I really try to find the middle road. I do stick to church teachings, but with the polarization that we encounter in our church, someone could misinterpret me and say, well, you're not teaching like the church is teaching. And so it's very complex. So even, and that's why I don't blame you guys if you're scared to venture into this world of church teaching, because even if you are on point with the church, someone with a different worldview will hear you differently. They won't hear you teaching the church's perspective. It's so complicated, and what's going on in the US, it's just really brought to light how we can speak and not communicate clearly, and and two people could hear two totally different messages from the same person in the same moment. So yes, so like we really need to be strong in what we believe, and to be able to back up what we are doing, and that's what I'm here for, to help you with that. Okay, so very quickly, let's look at liturgy for a second. We are all involved in liturgy, so we should be able to pray with our students. We should be able to do liturgical experiences with our students in our class, and it just takes practice. That's all it is, to be comfortable in our own skin with our faith, to be able to pray out loud, to be able to pray with other people. It's not something we really are very comfortable with as a Catholic Christian church. Some of our Christian brothers and sisters in other denominations are very comfortable in that. They can just pray, just kind of comes out of them, and the words just spill out of them. But we as Catholics, it doesn't really work that way a lot, right? And so I can do it because I practice this, and I forced myself to learn how to do this very early as a chaplain, and so now it comes naturally to me because I've just kind of allowed myself to trust that God is going to speak through me. That what I need to communicate is really going, I'm going to give it up to God, right? And so a lot of people don't feel comfortable with that. So we just got to bring ourselves to that place, and it just takes time. It might take your whole career, but you know, just keep trying and trusting and praying. And you know, the liturgies are here. What I love about our Catholic traditions is the format is given to us. Anyone can do a liturgy of the word, right? It's the liturgy of the Eucharist, you know, the second part of the Mass. That's, we can't because we are not ordained, but you know, but the liturgy of the word we can all do, and we are very comfortable with that format. Okay. And so moving into the sacramental part of this module, looking at matrimony and holy orders. Okay, so because there's a progression. In part 1 we do certain sacraments, part 2, and now we do the last bit of sacraments in part 3. And so they're the vocational sacraments, right? So again, we can discuss, you know, a lot of us had problems with the LGBT community and how it fits into our church. You know, how can the catechism in one hand welcome everybody, but yet put up such limitations? So let's see if we can address that. So looking at the sacrament of matrimony, it is a sacrament. So when you do get married in the church, it does get a little more complicated. And I'm noticing a lot of people are choosing not to marry in the church for many reasons. One, I'm really noticing that couples want to have the ceremony on site where they're having the reception. Makes it very convenient because people just go from one room to another, and it just becomes a good flow. Okay. Secondly, a lot of people want, you know, weddings outside. Okay, the church doesn't allow it, and everyone's like, you know, the church, they don't allow. There's reasons for it. I'm not going to use up video time for that, but they're not just pulling stuff out of here. Let's make them miserable. Let's make life difficult for them. Like when the church decides to do things, there's reasons behind it, right? And they're trying to uphold what is sacred. And to try to, if you want to get married in the church and it's surrounded in the Mass and the Eucharist, you're holding on to the sacredness of this, you know? And, you know, you can argue, yeah, we can do outdoor Masses, yes. But with the background with the wedding, you know, with having weddings in the church, it just gets complex because, again, people lose sight of the sacrament. Right? They lose sight of what this is all about. Everyone gets caught up in all the other stuff in the wedding, and the sacramental part sometimes gets lost. Okay? So, and plus we have so few clergy now, right? So for a priest to be driving to this park or that beach or, you know, that venue or whatever, it's hard. You know, they're in their facility. If they have 1, 2, 3 weddings, right? They can't be, there's not enough of them. Okay, so there's a lot of reasons, and we need to take that into consideration and realize if we're getting a sacramental wedding, you know, what is important. Okay, but the complexity of that too is we also know that not all relationships last. You know, we're living longer. You know, and so that timeline that's been spread out really does impact the church's teachings, right? Starting with when we talked about sexuality, you know, back in the day when, you know, you went from childhood to adulthood, like in a skip, right? It's 1 minute you're a child, the next minute you're in puberty and you are getting married, right? So it was easy to not have sex before marriage, right? But as the timeline stretches and the school system develops and we have, you know, hormonally, you know, charged young people in the schools, you know, who are just like bursting in the seams, you know, it's hard. It's hard to contain that, right? And so they're going to make decisions, and often they're going to make poor decisions, but they're just charged. It's this physical reaction sometimes, and, you know, in other aspects today, you know, with all the sexuality, we got into that. So it's not necessarily fitting into that plan that the church had in terms of that. But the reason why the church put, you know, that teaching into marriage is because, you know, it's what I talked about earlier. When you decide to have sex, it doesn't matter what age you are, it doesn't matter where your relationships are, even as a married couple, you know, you have to decide, you know, every time you have intercourse, You know, as a couple, you have to decide, are we ready to accept the responsibility for a life? You know, because even using contraception, which again, the church doesn't support, and again, that's another video, you know, it could fail and you could create a life. And that's why the church is so stuck on this, right? Because you're using that co-creator power that God's given you to create life, right? And what are you going to do with it? Are you ready? Are you in the position to care for that life? So if they put it into the context of marriage, if you are a young person, if you're deciding you're going to marry, it shows that perhaps you've gone through that maturing process. You're ready to settle down, take responsibility, build a home. That's a safe place to bring in a new life, as opposed to a 13-year-old, you know? You know, ideally, that's the ideal. Two people ready to move on in life, create a secure, life-giving, you know, situation for a potential child. That's why it's there. And, you know, the way things are, and I mentioned in my other video, some people aren't getting married till their late 20s, 30s, 40s. You know, it's unrealistic to think that people are going to stay virgins till that point in their lives. Some do, but many don't, because some people do fall in love and they think they're going to marry this person, but they, you know, the situation isn't right. They're finishing school, they need to start up their career, they're saving for a house, and they, you know, and so the relationship develops. You know, they make the conscious decision, an informed conscience, that this is the person that they want to continue to love in the most, you know, greatest way that God gave us the power to love, right? But something goes wrong along the way and they end up not getting married, and like, so, you know, they meet another partner. So it's not going to be that ideal that everyone is going to walk down the aisle a virgin, right? We know that. And that's why we have that process of search. And that's why I loved that video. Oh my God, it's not in my head. No, I posted it, you know, the woman who gives the talks to high schools. That's a great example of forming young people's conscience. So that's what you're going to do when you talk about sexuality in the church, right? They know about sex and condoms and all that through the secular gospel. You're going to tell them why the church, you know, put it in the context of marriage, just the way I told you, right? And why, you know, it's important, the sacredness of your body, the sacredness of your sexuality. And, you know, and getting pregnant, you know, is such a huge responsibility, but it's not the end. Like, you can give that life to a family, right? But the other flip side of having multiple partners over time, right, is that you can get all kinds of diseases, and people are sterile now, and they're, because of these diseases, and they're trying to get artificial insemination, and so it just compounds, right? And then we get lose track of who we are. I remember, I'm just going to say this really quick. I had a young girl in my campus ministry team years ago, and she's just the sweetest girl. And, you know, she was graduating, and we had done this Salesian retreat. And if you don't know anything about it, it's really powerful, and they do have an experience of reconciliation, going to the Sacrament of Confession. And she came to me, she goes, you know, at the Salesian retreat, I went to the priest, I told him this, and he told me I should tell you before I graduate. I'm like, oh, okay. And I didn't know what she was going to tell me, right? And then she told me that she's been having sex since she was in grade 7. I could have just, like, you could have blown me over. I just would have never in a million years have thought that. And so, you know, I didn't, you know, get upset at her. I didn't say, oh, you know, you're a bad girl, you haven't been following church teachings. There's no way I would do that. This was a young girl who somehow was lacking love. Something was going on in that family, because her younger sister eventually got pregnant in grade 11, coming after her. So something was lacking in that house regarding love. So I said to her, I mean, I talked to her, but the main point of my advice to her was, before you get married, have a relationship with a man without sex. Because from the very first person she dated in grade 7, she has had sex with every single person. I said to her, do yourself a favor. See what it's like to date someone without having sex. Find yourself that way. Love yourself. And so it's complicated. It's complicated. And then let's go back to matrimony for a second. It gets complicated when the relationship doesn't work. We're living longer. Our lives go in so many different directions. And then, 20 years, later, 30 years later, sometimes people are just like they're not on the same page, right? And so people, get divorced. They get separated. In the church, you can have an annulment, okay? It's a process. You have to, again, that's another whole thing, but you have to prove that really there was no foundation for that that marriage, right? Like the sacrament was not authentic in that respect, right? And then there's a process to go through an annulment too, right? But so life has changed. Life has changed so much since these church teachings have been written, but doesn't mean we can't still, include them in our worldview in terms of faith and use it for guidance and use the wisdom in which they were developed for. They were there to protect us. They were there to protect the dignity of human life. That's what the church teachings are about. And then when we look at our LGBTQ community where they can't get married, that's where we get frustrated too, right? But we're not there yet. Neither is society. We're still trying to figure this out. So if you think the church is going to arrive first, think again, because the church takes time. It takes a process of search. It's not going to go the speed of society. For example, pharmaceutical companies, this is going to be very interesting with this COVID vaccine and what's going to happen on the other end, because so many pharmaceutical companies rush through, get their approval, and then people are the guinea pigs. People get side effects, that change their lives or can kill them. And then you've got the lawyers advertising on TV, if you've been affected by this, call us, right? Because we'll help compensate. But you can't compensate for something you lost in terms of your health. How fast are they going to push through this vaccine? At what speed? Who's going to profit? The church doesn't work that fast. The church will take its time. Study. I mean, they've got brilliant people. Like, the church is not stupid. It is jam-packed of really educated, smart people doing research and looking at the effects of dignity of human life. And that's why it's slow. It's taking time to consider the impact on individuals, on society, on the future, on our moral dignity. Like all this, they just don't look at it from one perspective. The church is not the party pooper. The church is full of wisdom, right? And then the last section here is dealing with the clergy. We have the vocational sacraments. So we've got, you get married, you enter religious life, and also there's, the vocation of the single life too, and that's to be looked at. There's no sacrament involved in that, but it is a vocational call as well to, if you're someone who's been single all your life, hello. But anyways, Match.com. You cannot control some of these things, right? You're being called. And how do you live your life to fulfill your call, right? And that's what we all need to do. So those who are called to religious life, it's tough. It's a big commitment. A lot of people are, criticizing the church too, that it's got to change. And it does. And it will over time as God sees fit. He's going to bring the right person in. And he's going to change the church however it needs to be changed, right? It's going to. May not be in our lifetime. But everything we do helps impact the future. And that's why I always say I am a woman in the church. And I could have left the Catholic Church because I could have had great options, right? And I didn't. I stayed. It's like my birthright gift, right? And I figure, it's not about me. I'm here to make our church stronger and move it forward the best way I can. And however changes in the future, I hope it's for the best, and I hope people enjoy the changes that come into the church, and I hope I played a part in that to make our church better, stronger, and more life-giving. And that's the greatest gift. It's not about me. It's about the greater good. And so I just feel blessed that I was able to work in this capacity, that with Vatican II, I was able to, study theology and work in ministry, and to be able to use my God-given gifts in a capacity that, whereas, women, 100 years ago would never be able to discover these kind of gifts that I was able to discover. And I got to do this because someone before me sacrificed in some way to make the church the way it is today. It's awesome. And so with the priesthood, we deal with all the brokenness. It's part of our broken journey. We are a human church. And with human institutions, there's going to be so many problems, so many growing pains. The church is not immune to that. Everything's got to fall to rebuild. Death and resurrection, death and resurrection. The church is not any different. And so we need to figure out, make amends, never do it again, figure out how to move forward to the future, and try not to make those mistakes again, and try to become a better, stronger church in all its capacities. That's the short version of a very long conversation. And so I hope you guys will, when you navigate this module, that you will reflect on some of these things, because there are some amazing people in this church. I've met some of the most amazing, religious and clergy in working in this church that have given up their lives. Father Christopher Hartley, who I met in the Dominican Republic, who did like crazy amazing things for the people in the sugarcane fields. Basically got kicked out of the DR because he would have been killed, because he became the voice of the oppressed and the government wanted to get rid of him. So he's in the depths of Africa somewhere doing another ministry. God love him. Sister Maud, who I go to help in the DR, unbelievable. I call her the Mother Teresa of the Dominican Republic. This woman is amazing. So for every priest that has violated your trust in some way or has disappointed you in the church, know that there are so many out there just giving up their lives, putting themselves in danger, making themselves uncomfortable, so that there are people out there that can breathe easier in their life situation. And often they're dealing with the most vulnerable, those that have been discarded by society, and they've gone there to pick them up. I love our church. I love it with all its faults, because I have faults. Everyone has faults. God, if anybody, condemned me for every mistake I made, I'd be like nothing. I'd be a puddle on the floor. But for the grace of forgiveness, I can grow and learn from my mistakes, and people will still love me. Some will fall away. But they'll, this is what it's about. This module is about relationships. Grow stronger in your relationships. Look at the good that we can see. Learn from the bad. Challenge those who need to grow, but be open to forgive. Our Gospels are all about forgiveness. The prodigal son's the best. I just love it. That's God just waiting. Open arms. Come. I don't care what you did. Come. Because you're back. And I can work with you when you're back. But if you don't come back, I can't work with you. That's what it's about. It's beautiful. Awesome. We're going to pray, but I'm going to just shoot the next video with that. So just not to make it too long, but enjoy this module, and we're almost done. You've done a great job. Keep reaching out to me if you need help in any way. Please use me as a resource. I really do love working with you guys, all right? So peace. Have a great long weekend. I hope you get some great rest and some fabulous family time.